Alright guys, before we get into the podcast, let's get through the rigmarole first. Remember guys, this podcast posts each and every single Wednesday. The first segment of the show, we go through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. The second segment of the show, we're going to be doing a mock draft where we read through a mock draft each and every single week. The third segment of the show, we preview everything you need to know about on game day. We're going to be previewing the Denver Broncos game. And the fourth and final segment, we answer fans' questions. We go through the Miami Dolphins fan Q&A. Alright, so this first news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins running back Damien Williams will to miss time. So you guys probably already know about this, but I thought it was worth going through anyway to get some of the details out to you guys. Dolphins running back Damien Williams suffered a dislocated shoulder on Sunday and is now expected to miss time. According to Interap report of NFL.com, Williams will be sidelined for the next week's game against the Broncos, tweets Adam Schefter of ESPN.com, and could potentially be absent for further contests given that a dislocated shoulder typically requires a 2 to 3 week recovery period. Miami traded running back Jay Ajayi to the Eagles on October 31st, and Williams has split time with his second-year pro Kenyon Drake. Over the past 4 weeks, since Week 9, Williams has handled 34 carries to Drake's 32. While both have managed 12 receptions on the ground, Drake has been the more effective player as he has averaged almost 5.5 yards per carry, while Williams sits at almost 4.5 per attempt, which isn't bad. With Williams out of the picture, Drake will now take on a full-time role. Sonoris Perry now becomes the Dolphins' number 2 back, and the club could look to add an outside option to the 53-man roster. Miami doesn't currently have a running back on its practice squad. The Dolphins only have a 1% chance of earning a playoff berth this season following yesterday's loss to the Patriots, so inking a veteran back isn't necessarily a requirement, as the team might use this opportunity to look at younger players. Williams, 25, will become an unrestricted free agent in 2018. He's playing the 2017 campaign on a restricted free agent contract and received interest from the New England Patriots during the offseason. So just a quick take on this report, because it dives deep into it. This might be the last time when he dislocated his shoulder against the Patriots, this might be the last time we see Damien Williams in a Miami Dolphins uniform, which would be unfortunate. Obviously, I thought, and it was heavily rumored, that Damien Williams was going to be a Patriot. Obviously, he wanted to get paid. He was coming off a pretty decent year. He made a lot of big plays for us. He was a pretty big part of our playoff push. He made plays against the Buffalo Bills and against the Jets. He made a lot of really, really good plays. And he was a playmaker on our team. Obviously, he would have been a playmaker the Patriots as well. He really fits their scheme and what they like to do with running backs because he's such an effective and elusive player when you get him in open space. So it would be sad if this was the last we saw of Damien Williams, and I definitely don't want him to go to an AFC East opponent, that's for sure, because he's a very talented player, and he has the potential, if he went to the right place with a creative mind as an offensive coordinator, to have a really good rest of his career. I mean, he could definitely play 10 years in the league, 10 plus years really, and be an effective player on anybody's roster if used effectively and if used right. And if given enough snaps. I mean, he's a great special teams player when he's given the opportunity to be that. He's an all-around running back, and he plays with a lot of passion, and he's a great leader too, from all the interviews we've seen of players when they talk about him. So I think he's going to have a long career in the NFL, if not with us, with somebody else. But it's going to be we can't keep everybody this offseason. There's going to be a lot of Dolphins key playmakers that are free agents, and there are certain players that we extended last season that really didn't pan out this season, so it's going to be very interesting. It's very similar to last season. Who do we let go, and who do we keep? We barely let anyone go last season, and some argue that we extended the wrong people. Some people didn't think we should extend Kenny Stills. I was a big believer in extending Jarvis Landry that offseason. Now that we extended Kenny and seeing what Devontae Parker did this season, I'm glad we did that. But the Kiko Alonso extension and the Andre Branch extension, I think a lot of Dolphins fans are now questioning a lot more than they did before. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the organization decides to do with a lot of its key playmakers, especially in its playoff run in the 2016 season. And granted, we have a lot of young players on this defensive line, a lot of young talent. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. All right, this next news story, Dolphins D lineman William Hayes done for the season. This report comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins defensive end William Hayes will miss the remainder of the 2017 campaign after suffering a hamstring injury, tweets an Internet report of NFL.com, who adds Hayes will likely undergo surgery. Miami acquired Hayes on the cheap this spring, getting the veteran from the Rams in exchange for the 206th pick to the 223rd. The results have been excellent. While Hayes posted only one sack while playing 43% of the Dolphins' defensive snaps, he's been outstanding against the run. All told, the 32-year-old Hayes ranks as the NFL's 15th best edge defender per Pro Football Focus. Hayes' absence will certainly be felt, but Miami does have other options available to step in at defensive end. Rookie first-round pick Charles Harris could see his playing time percentage increase down the stretch of what has become a lost Dolphins season, while Terrence Fede might also get more snaps. We saw that against the Patriots, he did. The Dolphins reworked Hayes' contract after acquiring him earlier this year, deleting his 2018 season in exchange for a pay reduction in 2017. While the concession will allow Hayes to hit the open market next spring, he'll now be doing so entering his age 33 campaign and coming off a season-ending injury. Another Dolphin that I would love to keep. I mean, he's played so well, and he's really, I mean, he was one of the bigger parts, if not the biggest part, that we turned the run defense around. And he was he was a playmaker. I mean, the plays he made against the Falcons, if he doesn't make some of those plays, we probably don't win that game. When you think about the tackle for loss on Tevin Coleman and how he just blew up everybody. He was splitting double teams. I mean, he had a great game that game. Against the Titans, he had a tremendous game. Obviously, they were trying to pound the football down on our throat, and they were able to do that in the 2016 season. And it looked like a completely different defense in the 2017 season. And for one of the bigger reasons for that is because of William Hayes. And we can keep him for cheap. Will he be a priority for the Dolphins? Who knows? And it's going to be very interesting to see what they do with a lot of these older defensive ends, like a Cameron Wake or a William Hayes. Who do they value the most out of the two? And even Andre Branch. It's going to be very interesting to see what the Dolphins decide to do with some of its veteran players. All right, Jeremy Langford visits Giants and Dolphins. Jeremy Langford has not played in a game this season, but the former Bears starter made 2 trips about possible employment this week. The free agent running back made a trip to the Big Apple to visit the Giants on Monday. Field Yates of ESPN.com tweets. This is from Pro Football Rumors. And then to Miami for a Dolphins. He visited the Dolphins as well. Per veteran NFL reporter Howard Blazer reports, he reports that he visited the Dolphins. Langford has not been signed, but the two teams with dire running back situations displayed interest. The Ravens carried Langford on their practice squad and briefly on their 53-man roster earlier this season before the sides parted ways after a Langford injury. The Dolphins saw both Damian Williams and Sonoris Perry due to injury against the Patriots, leaving Kenyon Drake as the only healthy back on their roster. The soon-to-be 26-year-old running back has a career of 1,000 yards from the line of scrimmage and 11 touchdowns in 2 seasons. So, if you don't know, Adam Gase coached Jeremy Langford in Chicago, and what he was able to do with Jeremy was very special, and almost the Bears believed that they had a future star in Jeremy Langford. Obviously, the next season was uber disappointing, and really just disappeared off the face of the planet Earth. And obviously Jordan Howard took over the role as the Bears' long-term starting running back. But before, Jeremy looked really good in Adam Gase's offense because he's such a good receiving back. You know, he doesn't have the greatest vision in the world. He might not be the greatest carrying the football, but when it comes to running screens and anything that has to do with, you know, getting him in open space in the passing game, getting him, you know, in favorable matchups with linebackers and stuff of that nature, he really succeeded in the Adam Gase offense. And he's a good route runner. And obviously he's familiar with the offense and familiar with how Gase likes to call things, and obviously Adam's familiar with him as a player, and he knows what his strengths and weaknesses are. So it's a good fit, and obviously we don't have another running back on the roster, which is unfortunate. I think we can promote. I guess I don't know. I'd have to look at. I don't know what we're gonna do at the backup running back position, but it might not be such a bad idea. I think Kenny needs to get as many carries as he possibly can before the season ends, so we can really see what we're going to do, either in the offseason or the draft. And recent history will tell you, if you want a running back, you need to draft one, not pick one up in free agency, which is, in my opinion, the right thing to do. So hopefully Kenyon can prove it. The one thing about Kenyon that has always worried me since we drafted him is I never thought he would be a 3-down guy, or not a 3-down guy, but I never thought he could take the pounding of a 3-down player in the NFL. I think he can be on the field all 3 downs. I think he's got great vision, great speed. He has everything you would want in a running back. He's big. He's 6'2", big, long, fast. Obviously needs to work on ball security, but he has everything that you want in a running back. But I don't know if he can take the physical pounding of an NFL season. He can't be a workhorse running back because of that. And anytime that he's asked to take a lot of carries and touch the ball a lot in a game, he's obviously dealt with severe injuries. So that's the one thing I have. A big question mark about Kenyon is his health going forward more than anything else. So the Dolphins, if he doesn't perform, I think regardless if he performs or not, the Dolphins need to definitely look into a running back regardless. All right, this next news story, Dolphins quarterback Jay Cutler will start on Sunday. Dolphins quarterback Jay Cutler has cleared the NFL's concussion protocol and will start Sunday against the Broncos. Head coach Adam Gase told reporters, including Armando Salguero of the Miami Herald, tweets. This report comes from Pro Football Rumors. Miami will turn back to Cutler following a start by backup Matt Moore in Week 12, a loss to the division rival Patriots, in which Matt Moore completed 23 of 34 attempts for 215 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 picks. No matter who is under center going forward, the Dolphins aren't likely to be contending for a playoff spot. At the 4-7 club. The 4-7 club has only 1% chance of securing a postseason berth. Cutler, who also missed Week 8 with a rib injury, has struggled in his first season with the Dolphins. He ranks near the bottom of the league in most quarterback metrics grades as the number 33rd quarterback among 37 qualifiers per Pro Football Rumors, and isn't throwing the ball down the field, as he averages 7.8 yards average depth of target, ranks 32nd in the NFL. My take on this is the thing that's ticked me off more than anything about Jay Cutler is we just didn't get the player that we thought we were getting. And, whether that's a Jay Cutler issue, whether that's an Adam Gase issue in terms of how he calls games, but there is obviously a problem because when Matt Moore is in the game, our offense is more aggressive and we throw the ball down the field. The quick passing game is still a big part of the offense. When Matt Moore is in there, it's not that we go away from it, but since when Matt Moore is in there, defenses know, because he's put it on tape, that Matt Moore, when he is in there, our offense is more aggressive. We throw the football downfield. So that opens things up underneath. That opens up Jarvis Landry to, catch those 5-yard in routes or 5-yard drags and turn up field and, truck people over and gain, yak and yards after catch and stuff of that nature. And with Jay Cutler, it's totally different. Nobody respects the deep ball at all. Like, we are so not aggressive when he's in, and he hasn't proved that he can consistently throw the deep ball with our football team. And obviously the chemistry has been a big issue with him all season long. The offense is just anemic. It's inept when he's out there, and everything seems to be within 10 to 15 yards when he's out there in terms of yards, depth of routes and stuff of that nature. It just goes way down. The offense is just a completely different team. Play calling is just drastically different when Matt Moore is in, as opposed to Jay Cutler, which, one of the things that I thought was going to happen with Jay was signed is that we would take more shots downfield because of his arm, and we would, stretch NFL defenses. We did that with Tannehill. We did that with Matt Moore. I didn't think it would be anything different with Jay Cutler. Obviously, he has failed to do that, and that's been one of the more disappointing things about him. And, is one of his biggest assets his entire career has been his arm strength, and has been his ability to throw off of any platform and make a crazy throw or throw somebody open or fit in a very tight window. Those are the things that Jay Cutler has always done, and that's what some of the things that has led to so many of his interceptions. But he has not done that here in Miami. He's looked like the worst version of Jay Cutler I have ever seen. I think personally, I did a lot of, you guys can go back, but I did a lot of, research on Jay Cutler. We even did an entire 30-minute video of breaking down his stats when he gets into the red zone. What's his touchdown to interception ratio on third down? We did all of that stuff, and we compared it to Colin Kaepernick. We compared it to everybody. Matt Moore, and it looked pretty decent and we only looked at the year he was with Adam Gase, because I thought, obviously same offense, everything like that. Completely different player here. Absolutely completely different. And it's been very, very frustrating to say the least. This is by far the worst year I've seen Jay Cutler play, and a lot of it has to do with the way he's played. Obviously, he can't take the all of the blame, but I think he does definitely take a big chunk of it, because you can't just say, okay, as a fan, obviously you guys know we need a guard. I mean, our offensive line in the interior is just not physical enough. We get pushed around way too much. We can't move anybody off the football at all, and that's an issue. And so we need to get that fixed. I think getting Tannehill back is going to help so much in this offseason. But again, Jay Cutler has been an utter black hole for this Miami Dolphins football team. Next news story, this report comes from, it's really an article as opposed to a report, but it's a very interesting article. It has to do with Jarvis Landry's consistency and his production. This comes from Bleacher Report. It is titled a bright spot in Miami. In Miami, another off-the-radar wide receiver is adding to what has been a nice career. This year, Jarvis Landry has produced his fourth straight season of at least 70 catches, making him the first player in franchise history to accomplish the feat. According to NFL Vice President of Football Communications, Michael Signora, over the stretch, Landry hasn't exactly had Aaron Rodgers throwing to him, yet despite catching passes from Ryan Tannehill, Matt Moore, and Jay Cutler, he keeps churning and producing. It's a hell of a thing to see. So it's a very interesting article. You guys can go read the rest of it, but what I think people get mixed up with sometimes, and it's just my opinion. Everybody has a different opinion on a player and how much he means to the franchise. But you take that kind of production off the board, and you see how highly we regard him, and it's more than he's just a slot receiver. He's a huge part of this offense, and he's been a huge part in the red zone. Everything. It's not his fault that when Jay Cutler's in, obviously he's seeing double teams every third down. Nobody respects a deep ball. Everybody else except him on third down is one-on-one, and nobody can win on a consistent basis. It's not all Jarvis Landry's fault, and I think he's more than a slot receiver in my opinion. I think he can be a player that you line up on the outside and can have success. We've seen that against the Jets when he lined up way outside against the Jets. They ran a zero-man blitz. He beat his man deep and came down with the football. So he's a very, obviously, as this article states, a consistent player. You know what you're getting each and every single week. At any moment in time, he could break a tackle and go for 80 yards and put your team in scoring, and with the scoring opportunity. I think statistically, this has not been his best year, but I think this is the best he's looked in his entire career. If you guys watch him, and I'm sure everybody listening to this podcast, especially if you've listened to this point, has seen every game that he's ever played. And in my opinion, this is he's just looked the best he's ever looked. In my opinion, I think he's a smarter player. I think he's he's mastered just about everything you need to master at his position. And I still believe he's the best slot in the NFL, and I think the Dolphins need to do everything they can to extend him. And everybody's like, well, he's a slot receiver, he's not an X, he can't take over a game like a Julio Jones or an Antonio Brown. I think Jarvis Landry is just like an Antonio Brown in terms of, and he's not as good as Antonio, of course. Antonio is one of the best receivers I've ever seen play the game. And I'm not comparing him to Antonio. What I'm saying is you can use him very similarly, you know what I'm saying. You can use him very much like Antonio Brown. You can move him all around the field. You can move him in the slot. You can move him on the outside, and he can make plays for your quarterback. So I think he's a very, very important piece to the future of this football team, and I think he needs to be retained at all costs. That's just my opinion. Obviously, the Bill Polian school of thought is, this is not even just his opinion on, how you retain players and all stuff of that nature. It's really how every team views a player because their scheme is different. Jarvis Landry is our Julian Edelman, but better in my opinion, because he's a little bit more versatile in some of the things you can do with him. But I think he's a very important piece of this offense schematically as well. So there's a lot of reasons to keep Jarvis Landry, and I hope he stays in South Beach, because he will go on to have a tremendous career with somebody else, and I would like that career to happen in Miami. All right, let's move on to the next segment of the podcast, and that is the mock draft. So we're going to be going through every pick until the Dolphins pick. So the first pick in the 2018 NFL mock draft, this mock draft comes from Sporting News, in case you guys want to go check it out yourselves. The first pick, obviously the Browns currently hold the first pick in the NFL draft. Cleveland Browns select Connor Williams, offensive tackle, Texas. It's a very interesting pick there. Obviously they have a huge unit quarterback. Well, I like Deshaun Kaiser, but that's going to be very interesting. With the second overall pick in the NFL draft, San Francisco selects Saquon Barkley, who's my favorite player in the 2018 draft. I think he's by far the best player in that draft, and I think he's going to make some franchise, whoever selects him, very, very happy for many years to come. The next pick, the third overall pick in the NFL draft, New York Giants select Josh Rosen, quarterback from UCLA. Obviously, the whole Eli Manning controversy, Eli Manning thing, that the Giants, every team has to do it eventually. Obviously, fans see the ghosts of football teams past. Michael Strahan is no longer there anymore, all that other stuff. It happens to us all. But, obviously the Giants have to rip the Band-Aid off at some point in Eli Manning's career, and it looks like that time is now. It looks like, I think they would select Josh Rosen. I think that fits their offense. And Indianapolis Colts, Bradley Chubb, outside linebacker for NC State. Obviously, they need a pass rusher. Denver Broncos draft Quentin Nelson, guard Notre Dame. A lot of Dolphins fans want Quentin Nelson, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Dolphins got their hands on him. Chicago Bears draft Derwin James, safety, Florida State. He's had I would say a disappointing season, especially the start of the season. But when you watch the kid play, Derwin James, the man's just an utter athletic freak. The New York Jets select Orlando Brown, offensive tackle from Oklahoma. I don't know, I'm getting my tongue twisted today. Cleveland Browns, with their second pick in the top 10, select Minka, I can't remember how you say his name, Fitzpatrick, cornerback, Alabama. Huge fan favorite with Fins fans. A lot of people want him. Super talented guy. Obviously, the Dolphins, Cordrea has a bright future, and drafting somebody next to him that can also potentially be a shutdown corner with Cordrea, who looks like he's going to have a pretty nice career, would be a very wise decision for the Dolphins. Because if you can pressure Brady with just a four-man rush and play man-to-man across the board, we've seen how Bobby McCain has played this season. He's proved that he can be a legitimate shutdown slot corner. I mean, the man has been consistent each and every single game. He hasn't had one terrible game like he had in 2016, where he had multiple terrible games. But now that he got a year under his belt in the slot, he's blossomed into a very, very good player. So if we can get two, I don't know if Cordrea will ever be a Darrelle Revis or a Patrick Peterson, or a guy who you can just put on an island, but he can be a very, very, very good corner for a very long time. A very good corner. He can be a Pro Bowl caliber corner. Now, if we can get somebody next to him that can be at that level or better, or be a Revis and be a shutdown guy, obviously that would be great. Because if we can again pressure Brady with a four-man rush, play man-to-man across the board, because we have Bobby in the slot, we could put him on Edelman, and then we have the two outside guys as well. So that would obviously benefit us. I would love that pick if we went down that road. Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Denzel Ward with the number 9 overall pick, cornerback from Ohio State. Another very good player. Miami Dolphins select, I don't know how you pronounce his name, but he's a very, very talented player, and it's about time the Dolphins drafted an inside linebacker in the first round. I think how you pronounce his name is Roquan, or it's not Raekwon. Smith, inside linebacker of Georgia. The Dolphins have invested in their secondary pass rushing weapons on the offense. Now they will need to bulk up their offensive line and defensive interior. Smith can be the star linebacker that this defense needs. So whether you want to draft a corner or Smith from Georgia, who I think is a very good player, and he's a big part of the reason Georgia, has had this great season. And obviously, the middle of our defense has been atrocious the past 2 years. I think him, drafting a middle linebacker, we still have Raekwon McMillan. That bodes well for our linebacker core for many years to come. So either way you want to go, if you want to go defense in the first round or you would rather go offense, depending on your opinion, I would not mind drafting a corner at that pick or an inside linebacker, especially if those two players that are very, very talented, and I like them both a lot. So I wouldn't mind taking one of the two, and I think it would help the defense out, and it would be a great pick in terms of the personnel and players we see within the division. I think both of those players would help us a lot, especially since you look at what the Bills need, you look at what the Patriots are, you look at what the Jets need. The Jets need offense, the Bills need offense. And the New England Patriots have been a dominant offense ever since Brady, really got there. So it would fit, and it would be a good divisional pick in terms of the players, the teams we play, obviously 6 times a year. So, I think that would be a good pick. Seeing what direction the other teams in this division are going in, and obviously New England's already there. I think we need to maybe we do need to go the defensive route. If the kid for Notre Dame, who I just talked about him, I cannot remember his name right now. He's a really good player, and he would be a tremendous pick if he somehow fell out of the top 10. One thing I think this mock draft got really, really wrong is a lot of quarterback. Obviously, it didn't have Sam Darnold going in the top 10, which is really weird. If he does commit to the NFL draft, but I think you're going to see a lot of quarterbacks go in the top 10. I wouldn't be surprised if Baker Mayfield went, or Josh Rosen, who they had going on the top 3. I think a lot of quarterbacks are going to go in the top 10. So, he could fall, the kid from Notre Dame. But again, if you want to go corner, the kid from Alabama or the kid from Georgia, either way I think would be a tremendous pick for our future as a franchise and what everybody else is doing in the AFC East. Alright, let's move on to previewing the Denver Broncos game. It's going to be a very interesting game. Obviously, the implications of this game we wish were that, the stakes were higher at this point in the season. Obviously, starting the playoff run and starting November and December with a 4-2 record, very promising season, just went into the toilet. Other than that, when you look at this game, and in terms of the implications, obviously, very slim chances that we get into the playoffs because we would literally have to not lose a game. I don't think you can get into the playoffs going 8-8. I do think you can get in going 9-7. The AFC is extremely bad this year. I don't even see the Chargers winning 10 games this season. They're on a roll right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if they slipped up either. And the Jacksonville Jaguars just took a lot. I think they're going to be in the playoffs, but the AFC is so bad right now. But again, slim chances. So if you're looking for implications to this game and you're looking like a reason to cheer, it would be that we would literally have to go on a magical run to even be considered to go to the playoffs and be there in the final week of the season and not get eliminated at week 15 or 16. So my point is there is some reason to root for a win in this scenario. It's obviously going to be at Hard Rock Stadium. I hope regardless of our final record, I hope we finish strong. Obviously I don't want to see my team lose. I don't care what our record is. We could have only won one game at this point in the season, and I would be dying, or really wanting us to at least win the rest of our games. So I'm hoping that we finish strong this season. And I'm excited to see some of the younger players in this game. So that's another thing you guys should look forward to is you have Kenyon out here. You have some of these younger players that we need to see, similar to what the Giants are doing with Davis Webb and Geno Smith. What they really have, I can tell you what you have in Geno Smith. He's trash, but anyway, getting off that topic, you really just want to see what you have in some of these younger players. I think that's going to be exciting. Hopefully we see more playing time from Jakeem Grant, Leonte Crew, maybe Rashawn Scott gets some playing time. If Devontae continues to be this just crazy inconsistent player, I wouldn't mind benching him and starting Leonte Crew or Rashawn Scott or Jakeem Grant, even on the outside. So I wouldn't be opposed to that. And that might be a good idea. We'll see, though, and the whole Juwan James situation, And obviously, I don't think I don't know if Dramont's playing in this particular game, but I would love to see Jesse Davis start at tackle for the rest of the year as well, to see what we really have in him. So again, it's a really good opportunity going up against the Broncos to see what some of these younger players have. But when you look at this game, the defense for the Denver Broncos has been not bad. It's been very similar to what our team has went through. It's a talented defense. It has playmakers on it. The front seven is good, but they're on the field way too long. Like, their offense just cannot stay on the field on a consistent basis, and it just wears down their defense. And obviously that just messes with you. Anything that you do, and anything in life, if you continue to fail at it, obviously you're just going to get frustrated. So the defense is obviously broken down with miscommunication, very similar to our defense. Just really isn't a disciplined defense, and that obviously has a lot to do with winning, and not having that drive, and you really don't feel like you're playing for anything. So that defense has really suffered through the entire season. Vance Joseph has not done the job that it's not all his fault, but he hasn't really done the job that I thought he would with that defense. Obviously, coming from here, he did a pretty good job, and I thought he would do a better job. But again, the defense is really just, it's on the field too long. They're going to be missing Aqib Talib because he tried to punch Michael Crabtree. So this defense, if we can get a lot of cracks at it and we can keep their offense off of the field, then I think we have a really good chance of winning this game. I think we need to win this, the special teams battle, especially in this game, because I think field position is going to be key. I think time of possession is going to be key. I think our offense getting off to a good start is going to be huge, because what the Broncos love to do is really run the football, establish a line of scrimmage, control the line of scrimmage, control the clock, run the football with their power back, C.J. Anderson, all that other stuff. Then they get the play action bootleg off of it, and stuff of that nature. So it's that's kind of what we don't do well as a defense, and not stopping the run, but they love to use their tight ends in the middle of the field, all that other stuff. We really struggle. Most of their routes that they run with Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas is that play action, deep crossing route or deep slant. And that's some of the things that we struggle with. So if we let them establish that line of scrimmage, allow them to attack the middle of the field, then our defense is going to struggle, and obviously it's going to wear down, and it's going to break, and there's going to be some miscommunication. So on offense, we have to win the field position battle. We don't necessarily have to get points on some drives, but we have to move the football. We can't go 3-and-out, 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 and just lose the field position battle. Put their offense in favorable situations where they aren't really pressing and they aren't trying to make plays. Really, as a defense, we just have to neutralize the running game and make their quarterbacks win the game. And if we do that, then we'll win the game. It's going to be a very interesting game. Some other players to look for in this game is Stephon Anthony. Stephon Anthony, the playing time that he did get against New England, he looked really he looked athletic, he looked fast. There was a couple times, like I said, when I recapped the game, where he was getting into passing lanes. He was disrupting some of the quick passes that Brady usually throws up and over a linebacker and behind him to hit one of his slot receivers. There was a couple times where Stephon Anthony got in the way, and he's looked really good in coverage. He looked pretty good at the defense, in run defense as well. Some of the things that we've struggled with as a defense is Kiko Alonso continuously, and he did this in 2016, really on a consistent basis guesses wrong and takes the wrong gap assignment, and that has really hurt us. These last how many ever games. He's not a physical guy. He's not a linebacker that can get into the tackle box, get in between the tackles, move people around, move guards around, and make a tackle. Stephon Anthony is capable of doing that. He's a natural middle linebacker, and that's why he was drafted in the first round. So he's another player that we're going to have to keep our eyes on and see what he can do these last few games, because he is a talented guy, but obviously injuries have hurt him, and some other weird circumstances as well. So we'll see if he performs, but he's another guy to really watch. Again, I hope to see more of Jakeem Grant in this particular game. He had a tremendous preseason as an outside receiver, really helped us stretch the field, and if we have Kenny and Jakeem out there at the same time, I think that obviously can give defenses fits because of our quick passing game ability. If we were to throw Jakeem Grant a screen or anything like that, all he would have to do is make one guy miss, and obviously he's going to walk into the end zone because of his speed. So I think that adds another element to our offense if he's out there. So I hope to see some of these younger players out there and see what they can do. Obviously, I'm excited to see what Cordrea Tankersley is capable of these last 6 games. It's going to be interesting to see what he's going to do. And this particular game, he's got a tough matchup against a pretty good receiver tandem in Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. So there's a lot to look at in this game for the future of the Dolphins franchise. One of the bigger reasons is, they love to move Von Miller around. So I can't wait to see what Laramie can do against Von, and hopefully Jesse starts to tackle to see what Jesse is capable of. So there's a lot to look for in terms of young players making plays on Sunday. So if you're not, if you're out of it, you don't necessarily want the Dolphins to win, and you're one of those people who I guess wants to tank for some retarded reason, then those are some of the things you can look forward to, is just watching some of these young players get to play. Obviously, Kenyon Drake is a huge. I mean, all eyeballs are going to be on Kenyon. He's had when he's gotten his opportunities, he's made plays. If it wasn't for fumbles, he would have had he's pretty much been flawless. So it's going to be interesting to see what he can do against a Denver defense that has really struggled against the run. Sometimes they'll play the run great, and then other times it's very similar to our defense again. There's a lot of leaky big runs at times in the Denver defense. Sometimes you can bust a big run. So hopefully we can see Kenny do that on Sunday as well. But again, I think, if you're not invested into the season as much, that's some of the things you can look forward to, because obviously the playoffs are slowly disappearing away for our franchise. But there are young players to watch and to really see what they have for the rest of the year. And some of those guys are them. And again, if we could just neutralize their running game and make their quarterbacks win the game, put a bunch of people in the box, put T.J. McDonald or Rashad in the box for the entire game, make them pass the football, I think we'll have a successful day as a football team. We should beat this team. Schematically, it's not very hard to game plan for their offense. Defensively, offensively, they've struggled because they're constantly on the field. They lost one of their best players in Aqib Talib. It's going to be interesting. Obviously, the young player factor in this game as well is going to be interesting. The only fun thing that's not going to be fun is watching Jay Cutler on Sunday. But other than that, it should be an interesting game. And hopefully we see a lot more of these younger players that have, from the 2016 draft, that have a lot of promise, like Kenyon Drake, or not Kenyon Drake, like Jakeem Grant, like Leonte Cruz. Some of these players that we've been really asking to see a lot more of as fans that we really haven't seen. I think some of it is they're young, they really don't know the system, they mess up a lot. Maybe Adam Gase kind of pulls back on that. Because he's trying to win every game at this point, and he's still trying to win every game. But maybe he pulls a little bit more back on that, and he plays some of these younger players to see what they have. Because I think that would be the smart thing to do. Obviously, going into this next season, but we'll see what he does. I hope to see these young players. I think our defense should have a very good game this game. One of the things that I've been very happy about this season is the safety duo of T.J. McDonald and Rashad. I think ever since TJ came back, we haven't even won a game. But he's played very well, and both of them are very fun to watch together because they fly around to the football. They're all over the field, and I think we have a pretty good safety duo for a very long time here in Miami. So we'll see what happens in this game, but I like our chances in it. I think we match up well with them as an entire team, and as long as Jay Cutler doesn't turn the ball over, I think we should have a good game. All right, so moving on to the Miami Dolphins fan Q&A. Hopefully you guys ask some great, as you always do, ask some great questions in this fan Q&A. I'm excited. Obviously, a lot of people are doom and gloom, but the bright side to a doom and gloom season is you get to look to the draft, and hopefully you get to pick a superstar player for years to come. And we're not there yet. We can still finish pretty strong, but we'll see how we finish. It's obviously more likely that we finish with the top 10 pick in the draft. Hopefully not. Hopefully we can go out there and finish strong. This next question comes from Drew. He says, he says, my question for this week: Does it benefit Miami to win any more games this season? It's clearly over. Maybe some high picks and a healthier Tannehill next year is the most we can hope for. The Dolphins' needs aren't necessarily high-end players, if you know what I'm saying. Like, we just went through the mock draft. It's all possible that the corner from Alabama, whose name is escaping me, falls out of the top 10. The inside linebacker, obviously in that mock draft, he was at the 10th pick, from Georgia, Chubb. And then you go to, I'm getting his name mixed up again, the guard from Notre Dame. Those are players that the Dolphins need to take a serious look at, that can fall, anywhere from 15 to 20, or 11 to 15, anywhere in there. So we don't necessarily need like a top 5 pick unless you're looking for, Josh Rosen or Sam Darnold. If you're looking to, like, if that's what you think that the Dolphins need, then obviously, yeah, we would need to finish in the top 5 pick. But in my opinion, what the Dolphins need is one of those players. So we don't necessarily have to finish that high, or finish that high in the draft to select some of those guys. We saw Malik Hooker. Nobody thought Malik Hooker was falling out of the top 10. Nobody thought Marshawn Lattimore was falling out of the top 10. But they did because of the quarterbacks. They just went off the board in the top 10. So, it's especially with the quarterbacks in this draft, anything's possible. And I would not be surprised if one of those players fell off. So it doesn't necessarily benefit us to tank either. The Gamer12345 says, if Cameron Brate is a free agent next year, should we get him? Cameron Brate is a very interesting player. He's a great red zone target. He's a big target for a quarterback. Yeah, I think he would be a great pick. He can stay healthy. The Buccaneers have O.J. Howard. Maybe they're less obligated or the need to really re-sign him, but he's a great red zone target. He's a great player. He's a great route runner, and that's something that Tannehill needs. And I'm a huge believer in Tannehill. I think he is the guy for years to come. And I think, one of the things he's never had is a tight end and a consistent offensive line. So if we can do two of those things this offseason and get him a consistent offensive line that's a physical bunch and that's consistent and that can stay healthy for the majority of the season instead of like 30% of the season, and get, obviously, a tight end that can be his security blanket that every quarterback in the NFL nowadays needs. It's a matchup nightmare. I think that would be a tremendous get for our team and something that we really, really need. So yeah, I would love to have Cameron Brate. I also think he's a very smart player. He's a great route runner. And that allows him to get a lot, get separation on a consistent basis. So that would be a great get for Tannehill. Especially. There's a lot of tight ends that are free agents. Also, Tyler Eifert is a free agent. He has health issues. I would definitely not. I wouldn't want to invest money in a player like that. And then obviously Jimmy Graham, who also has health issues, and that's another player I wouldn't necessarily want to invest a lot of cash in. All right. This next question comes from the Gamer. He says, "What would be your thoughts on drafting Josh Allen in the second round?" I don't think, it's hard because you see Lamar. I don't think six quarterbacks are going in the first round, but I do think 5. Now, who are the 5 going to be? You talk about Josh Allen, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, Baker Mayfield, Luke Falk. I think all 5 of those guys have potential to go in the first round. My favorite quarterback, or really my top 2 favorite quarterbacks in this draft, are Sam Darnold. I think he's going to be a very good player, and Luke Falk. I really like him. I think he has potential to be pretty dang good. So I wouldn't be surprised if 5 went in the first round. Even Lamar Jackson you can throw in there. I don't know if I didn't mention him before, but that doesn't necessarily mean Josh Allen wouldn't be selected in the first round. So it would be interesting to see if he would drop to the second round, but I don't think the Dolphins need to go to Josh. And my point is I think there are other quarterbacks. If they were to select one in the first 2 rounds, I think there are other quarterbacks available that probably, Josh Allen's he has a lot of potential, but he's a prospect. He's going to take a very, very long time to develop. So I don't necessarily think that would be the greatest idea. This question comes to the Gamer. He says, "What should we do at quarterback for the rest of we should start Matt Moore, but obviously Jay Cutler is going to start." The Gamer12345 says, would you be interested in getting Damian Harris in the second round? That's a tough question to answer because I don't know what the Dolphins are going to do in the first round. So depending on the route we went down, there are a lot of players, man, that could fall to the second round that I really like. So I'd have to answer that after I saw the first round. This next question comes from Take Me Out. He says, part of the O-line problem is a lack of cohesiveness and lack of talent at guard position. Pouncey not being able to practice consistently, I think, hurts the team. It's time to replace the whole middle of the O-line, center, and 2 guards positions. I'm not necessarily against what you're saying because you have you make a tremendous point. One of the bigger problems that we've had is having a consistently healthy offensive line, and obviously that goes hand in hand with cohesiveness. So I don't necessarily think the Dolphins need to get rid of Mike Pouncey. I think they should keep him, but I do think, because I think that would cause a whole nother. It's hard to find a center that's that good in the NFL that's going to be better than Mike Pouncey. I don't think the Dolphins are going to do that this offseason, but I think Mike Pouncey should be the center, and obviously we're still taking a risk on health issues because he could, at any time, his hip could go and be out for the rest of the year. So he is a danger there. But Anthony Steen, I think, is a good and solid player at the center position. Then you think the 2 guards obviously are good. Ted Larson is not coming back, and neither is Jermon Bushrod. So yeah, those are 2 huge needs in this offseason. Gamerific says, who do you think we are, or excuse me, this question comes from Jacob B. This is more of a statement than a question, but he says, Devontae Parker looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane. What a waste of talent he is. So soft and lacks the heart and determination to be a special player. Miami should try to trade him. They may be able to get a second rounder due to his upside. I've been very disappointed in Devontae's year. Very, very disappointed. Obviously, he can't help being hurt, but when he comes back from injury, he's just a completely different player. I mean, I don't know why he's so inconsistent. I don't understand what it is if it's a mental thing. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with him. Hopefully, I'm sick and tired of saying, let's give him one more year. But it is either time to, because I don't know. It's a tough question. I guess the best thing, I mean, he's still on his rookie contract. He will be next year. So, yeah, we should definitely still keep him around to see what he does. But it is getting, at this point, the frustration is boiling over for not just Dolphins fans, but I think people within that organization as well. The Gamer12345 says Jeremy Hill will be a free agent next year. Is he worth making a move? No. I think what the Dolphins need to do, if they were going to take a running back, we've seen in the past 5 to 6 years really. Jeremy is a pretty good example of that as well. You can get a very, very good running back in the first 3 rounds. People just do not value running backs like they used to. So that's why you see so many talented people like Kareem Hunt, Alvin Kamara, who would no way even be close to falling out of the first round in the 90s or even the early 2000s with some of these teams. So that's why you see all these talented guys fall so far, is because teams just really don't value the running back position like they used to. So let's see here. This next question comes from Lowell. He said, "What was the ref cheating us on the whole game, especially the Jarvis Landry on the 4th down and the punt? We clearly recovered it. The challenge thing, Adam Gates chose not to challenge it. Now, I did not see the replay. I don't think anybody necessarily saw the replay." But apparently he says that the ball hit the ground. Now, whoever you want to believe, I don't know. But the play, the side that I did see, the angle that I did see, it looked like he caught it. So who really knows? And in terms of the punt, I do think New England did recover the punt. If you look at the replay again, it looks like a New England player does recover the punt. Tones says, what is our biggest need? What do we need to draft in the first 2 rounds? Our biggest need, if I had to have it my way, what we would do in the first 2 rounds, I would go offensive line in the first round. I think we just need to commit at this point and fix this problem because it continues to be an issue. And I would probably go in the second round, either defensive back or a linebacker in the second round. This next question comes from Tones. He says, do you think Adam Gase has lost the team? He still, will he still be the coach next year? Or, yeah, he still will be the coach next year, right? I think we need to give him time to build his team. I think this year, the team, it's interesting how fans look at this season because, nobody's really giving him a pass. And, that's one of the things I said about Adam Gase in his 2016 season is, he had so many injuries, but yet he still made the playoffs, and he still made that team a 10-win team, which is just crazy to me because that team was injury riddled. This year, he's just lost. He's had too many injuries at key positions. He has he's had too many injuries where you just really can't cover it up for that long. He was able to cover up Matt Moore for 3 games. Obviously, once we got into the playoffs, not so much. So when Matt Moore has to start the entire season, or Jay Cutler has to start the entire season, that's a completely different animal. So you can see why our team struggled like it did. Upper Echelon says, does Jakeem Grant get cut this season? That's a great question. Depending on how the draft shakes out, but I don't think he will. Upper Echelon says, we should use our first 2 draft picks for a quality lineman, draft a tackle with the first pick, move Tunsil inside a guard, and draft another guard with the second pick. Again, I think every Dolphins fan, it's been such a problem for so long. It just needs to be fixed. And again, I would not be opposed. It's not the sexiest pick in the world. It might not be the biggest name in the world, but in the long run, it will help this franchise. It will help this franchise more than just about any other player would, because it is such a need. Axel Rivera says, first round, we have to draft Quentin Nelson. That's his name from Notre Dame. But if he's not there, then we should draft the corner, and second round, we draft Billy Price. So I think, based on the questions here, what you're asking and what everybody wants, I think everybody's pretty much in agreement on the guard situation. Jacob B says, seems too high for a guard. You can get good guards in the late first and second round. Usually if you go lineman that high, you go left tackle, right tackle. Can Tunsil play left tackle? Maybe he is better at guard, and you go for the left tackle from Notre Dame instead. Quentin Nelson can play, or the player from Notre Dame, he can play any position as well. So, same thing. I think Zach Martin played tackle in college, and they switched him to guard. So, you can do that with him. I think he would make a smooth transition. Or you can move Laramie into guard. You make a good point. This question comes from Ronald. He says, why did Adam Gase give up on the players? Leave the sideline and go sit down on the bench for a long time. And when he was on the sidelines, he had no energy and praising things that weren't good and trying to keep the players mentally in the game. Gase is now the Jay Cutler. I don't know what that necessarily means, Ronald. I didn't see what you saw. It looked like Adam Gase was pretty involved, and I don't think anybody is as upset as Adam is, for sure. He had a lot of hopes for this team, and he thought we were definitely going to build on, the building blocks that we built in 2016. A lot of young players experienced winning early on in their career, and usually that's a good thing. Anytime you get a first-year player, and there was a lot of first-year players on that team that experienced the playoffs like they did, and not even first-year players, but our entire team is, especially our offense, just filled with young players. It was a really good experience, so we didn't do that. Hopefully we can recover this next season. The Republic of Finn says, do you think it's time to play our backups to see what they have out of them, because odds of us making the playoffs are the same odds as my grandpa coming back? Yeah, I do. I do think we need to play young players and see what they have left. Jacob B says, top 5 pick is coming. What should Miami do? Draft a guard in the top 5 is a reach. You're absolutely correct. It is a reach. But again, I think Axel is the one who brought it up, who asked the question. You could draft a tackle, the kid from Notre Dame. There's a lot of tackles in that top 10, that first upper echelon, if we finish there. And you can transition either one to guard. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. Gangrene says, biggest needs in the draft, in my opinion, tight end, O-line, and linebackers. And Stephon Anthony needs more playing time. I do agree with that. Tight end, I think Cameron Brate would be a good free agent pickup. He's young. I think he's coming off of his rookie contract. Smart player. And he reminds me, he's not as fast as Dallas Clark, but he reminds me a lot of him because he's just a savvy route runner. And I like that in my tight ends. And he's a big target. And I think him and Tannehill would make a good combination. Jerry says, does it make sense to put Matt Burke at DC after being a linebacker coach of a disappointing linebacker corps? Did it make sense? No, but I think the Dolphins thought it would work out, and obviously he's a rookie defensive coordinator, and even I tend to forget that sometimes. I think bringing Matt Burke would probably be the best thing to do because he's had time to learn. And obviously the team wouldn't have to switch schemes and go through that again. So I do think it would be a good idea to keep him at, but I wish the Dolphins, when Vance left, I wish they went out and got a veteran defensive coordinator. I would have rather that than, hire a rookie. This next question comes from Jerry. He says, "Do you think Andre Branch is making more than he's worth?" He's been injured and he's been in and out of the lineup this entire season. But when he has played, he has looked pretty good. Axel, but he's been hurt all year. Axel Rivera says, "Adam Gase is such an idiot for trading Ajayi now. We only have one running back available. They should fire Adam Gase. He is also younger than Tom Brady. We don't need a young, inexperienced head coach that shows no emotion and doesn't get after his players." That is not true. I think Adam Gase shows a lot of emotion, especially in his press conferences. He's one of the more boisterous head coaches in the NFL. And the players will tell you. I mean, even his first season in there, he doesn't lie to you. He'll tell you if you're bad. He'll tell you if you're good. I think he tells it like it is. I think he's a very emotional head coach, and I do think he is a good head coach. It's just, again, people are overlooking the injury. Like, we're playing, dude. We didn't have our starting quarterback. We didn't have our starting cornerback. We didn't have our second-round pick that we drafted, Raekwon, who wasn't just a second-round pick. He was going to be the starting middle linebacker for this team. A lot of things went wrong. We had Ray Maluga. We took a lot of players out of retirement, and anytime that happens, obviously it's not a good thing. And Adam Gase, for what it's worth, has made that team look better than I think it would with other people. This question comes from Ronald. He says, "Williams is probably hitting IR, creating a roster spot. So he says, so you will see Davion Smith being activated and playing, and Gase might bring back Storm John." The whole Davion Smith thing, I think, is going to be interesting. I mean, he's a very young player, and I liked him coming out of Michigan. This question comes from Magnus. He says, what do you think will happen in the offseason, our top 3 draft needs? I think our top 3 draft needs is cornerback, linebacker, and offensive guard. I think those are our top 3 needs. Jeremy says, "Cutler will probably start next week, but do you think it's time to put Fells in and see what he's got?" I would not be opposed to that. I wouldn't mind seeing it. I don't think you're gonna get good results at all, but it would be interesting. Ronnie Hill says, "How good do you think Stephon Anthony played?" I think he played better than I thought he would. Ricky Ricardo says, "If we get a top 10 pick, what quarterback would be available?" Most of them. I think you probably wouldn't see, if you were top 10 pick, you probably wouldn't be able to get your hands on Josh or Sam, but Luke Falk definitely. I don't think necessarily that's if Luke Falk is in the second round, I think the Dolphins need to take him. If any of those quarterbacks somehow fall out, I don't like Baker Mayfield. I don't think he's going to translate to the NFL. I don't like Lamar Jackson. I don't think his game translates. I love Luke. I love Sam. I love Josh. I think those guys can translate to the NFL. But Luke Falk might be my favorite quarterback in the draft. And if he drops and somehow falls out of the first, which I don't think will happen, he probably most likely will either be a Jet or a Bill. But if he somehow falls to the second round, that should be a priority for the Dolphins to take him. Not because I think the Dolphins need a quarterback, but I think they'd be foolish not to. I mean, I think he's the first. I think if I would grade him, I would give him a first-round grade. I think he has potential to be a good player, and I think taking a player with that much value down the line might become very valuable to us. It's very similar. It's very similar. Like, same thing with the 49ers did with Steve Young and Joe Montana. They didn't draft Steve Young, but they obviously traded for him. Even though they had Joe Montana, they still obviously went out and got him. So it's very important. Same thing with the Patriots with Jimmy Garoppolo. That he probably at that point would be the best player available. He would make the most sense to pick. He has the best. Obviously he could bring trade value down the line, or he could develop into a great quarterback. So I think if the Dolphins find themselves in that situation, that it would be foolish not to take one. Ricky Ricardo said, this question comes from the Gamer, he says. This question comes from Ronald, or it's more of a statement. He says Mayfield is the first pick. Rosen will slide down in the middle of the first round. You might be right about that. So that is going to be your Miami Dolphins podcast for this week. I really enjoyed it. A lot of different things and a lot of moving parts in this organization. It's going to be very interesting to see what is done, especially in the draft. The draft fascinates me the most. If the Dolphins don't win another game, they go 4-12, and we find ourselves with a top 5 pick. I don't necessarily think the Dolphins don't take a quarterback with one of those picks. I don't. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. That's what makes this offseason so interesting. And depending where we finish, I mean, my opinion is we shouldn't take one if we got the top 5 pick. I think we should go with the best player available at that point in time, or go with Quentin Nelson. But if they find themselves in that situation, what do they do? And I'm going to actually make a video on this pretty soon, because it's so interesting and so fascinating to me. Let me know what you guys think they will do, and I am Skaggs1383, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Again, a very good chance that you might see a quarterback drafted in the first round by the Miami Dolphins, which would only be the 4th time in NFL or franchise history that happened. The other 3, obviously, Tannehill, Bob, and Marino, and the 4th would be whoever the Dolphins might take in the first round.